started. So my name's Patty Holland. I'm one of the assistant professors of the practice here on the mindfulness education team. So at Brown, the Mindfulness Center is situated in the School of Public Health. And so that's where my appointment is. And then our courses are 8-week courses, MBCT, MBSR, and our teacher training programs are non-academic. So they're situated at the School of Professional Studies. So I straddle both, and that's where the MBCT teacher training is. Welcome, Angelica. So let me start by asking, how many of you are familiar with MBCT? What does that mean, Andrea, if you don't mind my asking?
Somewhat. Like I've been following like a PESI training that discusses MBCT. So that's kind of my exposure to it at this point.
Okay. Anybody else have some familiarity with it, or that's what you hear? You also want to learn about it?
This is John, or JOT's iPhone. Yeah, I can't remember the title of the book, but they were using BCT for quitting smoking.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And through my experience and places I've been in cognitive behavioral therapy, I think adding the M to it is a little bit more of an experience versus knowledge.
Yes.
Which in my mind, I think is more impactful, which kind of brings me here.
Yeah. Yeah, John, that's exactly right. It really is it's a lot more experiential. Welcome, Erin. And hi, who else joined? Angelica, Gabrielle, it's good to have you here. Just making sure everyone's here interested in learning about MBCT teacher training. Yeah, and the MBCT course itself if you haven't taken it, because that is actually the first step for teacher training. How many of you are familiar with MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction? I sometimes start there. Yeah, a little bit more people familiar with it. So MBCT is built, for those of you that know MBSR, MBCT is built on the foundation of MBSR. So MBSR was designed by John Kabat-Zinn, and it's an 8-week course, 2.5 hours, training in different mindfulness practices, formal and informal. And it looks at this arc of stress and like psychology and physiology of stress. There's also an element on communication. And when John designed MBSR, he wanted to bring the training of mindfulness, this way that we can train to become familiar with our mind, recognize the nature of the mind, sort of reconnect with our sense of wholeness, because often we live in our heads, coming also into our body and our hearts. And he wanted to find a way to bring these practices to a larger population, in particular into the healthcare system, because he really felt that it could shift the bell curve of humanity's well-being, actually. And so he designed this 8-week program, brought it to the University of Massachusetts Medical Center, and then immediately started researching it. So that was in 1979. So a lot of the research that we see in mindfulness stems from the inception of MBSR. And then about 10 years later, early 90s, 3 experts in the field of depression, cognitive therapy, cognitive science, and research. One was in Canada, Zindel Siegel. He received a MacArthur grant to develop, in essence, what they thought was going to be a different type of follow-along CBT group-based program. And he wanted to know who the leading experts were in cognitive therapy at that point. And it really was Mark Williams, who was at Oxford, and John Tisdale, who was at Cambridge. And so he talked to them, and so they joined together. And we had already learned a lot about recurrent depression through the inception of cognitive therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. And they were recognizing, when they looked at their research about what contributed to people experiencing multiple episodes of depression. So MBCT initially started for relapsing depressive episodes. It's expanded, and I'll talk about that. They were realizing that 2 key mechanisms that could interrupt this process or their aim really was to do a couple of things. It was to lessen the intensity, frequency, and duration of depressive episodes, excuse me, but also support people to develop a different relationship, not only to their thinking, but to all experience. And they were looking at attention regulation, where we placed our attention or what pulled on our attention. And also this ability to decenter from our experience. So to stand by it, to be fully aware of our experience. So we're not talking about dissociation or diffusion or denying or suppressing, but to be fully in our experience, but not so fused or identified with it, that could support someone in responding differently to these experiences. Those of you that are familiar with some mindfulness, excuse me, based episodes in acceptance and commitment therapy, this is similar to when they talk about cognitive diffusion. It's a similar process. So they went to the Center for Mindfulness. They met with John Kabat-Zinn, and they took a couple of the classes. They didn't do the full 8-week program. They liked the structure. They liked a lot of what they learned. They created something. They immediately started researching it, and then they didn't get the results that they wanted. So for those of you that are clinicians, you might be familiar with DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. So at this time, Marcia Linehan was actually doing a postdoc fellowship at Oxford, and she was curious about what they were doing. They explained it, and she goes, oh, you really, and DBT had already been developed. She was like, you really are looking at mindfulness as the mechanism. So they went back to the Center for Mindfulness, and they took the full 8-week program, MBSR program, and they realized a number of things. That it was in learning the skills of mindfulness, particularly as it related to being present and aware to more difficult experiences and maybe relating to them differently, that would allow for some relief from depression. And they also realized at the time when they went there that the teacher's mindfulness practice was essential. Because when we're in the class, we might have a clinical background. My background is in psychiatric rehabilitation. When we're in the class, we might have our clinical expertise, but we're there as a mindfulness teacher as well. And so we're investigating experience in a different way. So they designed MBCT based on MBSR, and then they infused it with cognitive principles and practices to help illuminate the nature of the mind and the role that thinking plays in terms of how we're perceiving, how we're appraising, and then the impact that has on our mind and mood states. Because what the research was really showing and continues to show is with depression, there could be a slight change in mood. You could wake up and maybe it's a cloudy day, and so there's a little bit of a low mood, and that can trigger a cascade of negative thinking, which if left unknown or unattended, can create a downward spiral. The same thing can be reversed. You can have like a negative thought pop up because these ways, and then it can spiral into downward mood, because these ways of relating to experience, we all have these patterns as human beings. We all have these vulnerabilities and these patterns and these ways that we very habitually, experientially avoid that which we don't want. And when we've had more challenging experiences with different mood states, we have more ready access to negative material. It just becomes more available through the way the brain is operating and working memory. So they designed MBCT, and like John, they immediately started to research it. So MBCT is not mindfulness injected into traditional CBT. It's mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. It's not mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a protocol that's been researched. It's an 8-week program. At Brown, we run the class 2.5 hours. The protocol is 2.25 hours. And it involves training in foundational mindfulness practices. So we train in the body scan. We train in 2 ways of attending to experience, a focused attention and an open awareness, and how these 2 different ways of attending to experience can be useful in different ways when we're engaging with challenging experiences. We engage in mindful movement, recognizing that so much of our experience with challenging and distressing experiences is in our head and how we're thinking about it, trying to fix it. This is what the brain has at its disposal. It tries to think its way, and there's different cognitive processes that kick in. So we engage in mindful movement so that people have a variety of ways of practicing that can support them. And then we also engage in briefer practice. In MBCT, there's something called the 3-minute breathing space that we build on over the course of the 8 weeks. And then there's informal practices. So in the practices, we're scaffolding and supporting people to scaffold and build the capacity to be with challenging experiences, to see through and see these different ways of cognitive patterns and behavioral patterns, to relate to them differently, to be with them differently. And when we explore this in this arc of content around looking at automatic pilot versus awareness, we look at living in our heads, the way that we can gather a scattered attention and ground ourselves. We look at recognizing aversion, because often the way that we as humans, and then people that have experienced challenging mood states, sort of get conditioned to is the way we deal with aversion may in fact be what's triggering and contributing to the depth and the length of episodes of challenging moods. And then we also start looking at what are your early warning signs and developing plans for nourishing and other activities that can support us. Sort of bringing in a little bit of understanding of the behavioral activation component of CBT, but not fully as such. In MBCT, the primary mechanism or vehicle for change and transformation is mindfulness. And so it's a very much an experientially based program. And then there's homework practices between the weeks so that people can gather. And so the research is very, very strong. In fact, I'm just back from a conference in the UK celebrating 30 years of MBCT, where the 3 founders, Zindel Siegel, Mark Williams, and John Tisdale, were really like looking at the research over the 30 years. So it started with recurrent depression, and then it's expanded in research to residual symptoms of depression. It's in the UK and Canada's National Health Services as treatment as normal for mild to moderate depression. We're not near that in our country yet. I was just talking with Zindel Siegel today, and he was sharing that there's now evidence for MBCT even with more pronounced episodes or symptoms of depression. And there's also a screening out process in terms of it might not be mindfulness, as we know, is not for everyone, and mindfulness may not be what's called for at the time. A different level of treatment may be required. So then it's also been looked at anxiety, and now we're seeing just an expansion of MBCT to other conditions, particularly those that really generate or precipitate depression. So I'll stop there. So any questions on the program itself? No? Okay. So the first step in the teacher training program is to take the class personally. So the first thing you need to do is take the class. You can take it with Brown, but you don't need to take it with Brown. You know, one of the reasons why we're committed to our teacher training program at Brown is because there's not that many MBCT teachers in this country. And so I trained with Zindel Siegel, and Zindel has consulted with us from the beginning on the development of our program, and Zindel teaches with me in one of the training classes. So the first thing that you do is you take the class personally. And ideally, this is for your own well-being. When you're in the class itself is not a training. It's open to the public. So you'll be there as a participant, and you'll be there with individuals that are there personally for their own experiences. That might not be healthcare practitioners. It's fine that you share, you might be interested in bringing this into your work, but the primary role in the class is just for your own benefit. Dive in, deepen or establish your own personal mindfulness practice, experience firsthand what the program is like. This will give you the experience and the knowledge that you need to decide if you want to continue to pursue training to teach it and invest any of your resources. You may stop after taking the course personally and think that was great or not, or you may think I learned a lot, but I don't want to teach it. Better that you know that, right, than investing resources. So you take the class personally. So then once you do that, you can apply for the training program. And you can apply for the training program step by step, or you can do the first half. It depends on what you want. So any questions before? I'm going to put up a graphic of the training program. Any questions so far that anyone has?
I have a question.
Yeah, hi,
So
Kathy.
what is the biggest difference between MBSR and MBCT?
Yeah, it's a great question. People ask that. So a lot of it is the aims and the intention. There's many similarities. Class 1 is identical. If you're familiar with MBCT, class 1 is identical. And if you're familiar with most mindfulness programs, class 1 often involves like the raisin activity where we eat a raisin and we go through our senses. So as an MBCT, I teach and train in both programs. So as an MBCT teacher, I might be inquiring into the raisin like I would in an MBSR class. But then at the end, I'm going to turn and ask the question, so how am I paying attention like this? How does this have anything to do with times when we might be feeling depressed or anxious or our well-being? We immediately start looking at applying what we're learning towards our mind and mood states. And so Zindel Siegel once said that MBSR is sort of like a large spotlight on suffering and stress. And MBCT then is a more narrow flashlight on our emotional lives. I find MBCT to be more explicit. There's a little bit more psychoeducation perhaps in MBCT because sometimes people need support connecting the dots. It has an underlying psychological frame in terms of our vulnerability or people's vulnerability to experiencing depression and anxiety and other challenging mood states and the role that cognition plays. So there's awareness, there's cognitive exercises facilitated as awareness practices aimed to illuminate that. So for example, in one class, we don't necessarily teach cognitive distortions per se as a concept, but I might put up a list of common thoughts that we have when we're depressed and anxious and ask people, like, what's your top 10 hit parade? And people are surprised at how easily they recognize their thought patterns. They also are surprised at how these thought patterns are common. And then we start to turn to what's happening in your experience right now, even just thinking about these thought patterns, because typically just even bringing them to mind, there's a shift and a lowering of mood and people are like, oh, I'm feeling this in my body. Oh, I feel a heaviness. So we start to also make that connection. And then we do support people and like we take a look at like, what are your early warning signs so that people can start to develop I wouldn't necessarily say they're clinical relapse prevention plans, but that is what we're looking at. We're really looking at identifying activities that are nourishing, that offer a sense of mastery or pleasure, because those of you that have experienced personally or know people, especially with depression, taking care of yourself is one of the first things that goes. This is true for all of us. And then we start to lose sight of what it is that supports us. And the more we sort of drop into that level of inertia, the harder it gets. So we explore that through mindfulness, Kathy. So we're really narrowing the focus. MBCT could be considered the first evidence-based adaptation of MBSR, and it's specific to mind and mood states.
Thank you. And does that mean that MBCT is more focus on like depression people?
Yes. Yeah. It's MBCT was initially designed for depression, and it's also been researched for anxiety. So when we offer it, and I'm clear at SPS, we're not offering it as a clinical program. It's for personal benefit because it's the School of Professional Studies is in the clinical site. So MBSR also has positive outcomes for depression and anxiety. In some studies looking at all MBPs, MBCT had higher rates of positive outcomes, probably because we're more directly applying the awareness that we're cultivating towards these mood states specifically. So it's a more targeted focus.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the teacher training pathway. I start with the first half because, and then I'll go into the full pathway to certification because it can be long. So because of the nature of MBCT and because MBCT is designed for individuals that are struggling with their moods, there's a lot of people actually that are also seeking MBCT that might not have a diagnosis of depression and anxiety. But right now, who among us is not experiencing depression and anxiety? And a lot of people are recognizing, they're like, I recognize that there's something about the way I'm thinking about things and the way my mind is that's just really contributing to my mood. So there's people that are also seeking it that like have prolonged sadness or are just or anxiety. And anxiety and depression are often so paired. But because of that, unlike MBSR, we do require that people have some training and professional experience supporting people that might be experiencing these challenging mood states. You want to be able to hold the space for people. And when you take the class, you'll see that the way we're responding and interacting and investigating our experience is different than how you might in a psychotherapy session. It's a different approach. So prerequisites would be that you have some understanding of cognitive behavioral therapy. We don't teach that, so we just want people to have some recognition of the role that cognition plays in mood states, and that you've taken the class personally. Here it says you should have a personal mindfulness practice of 2 years. We'll accept 1 year. So then the first thing that you do after you've taken the class and you're interested in learning more or bringing it into your work is take the MBCT Foundations and Facilitator Training class. And I think this is the heaviest lift because of the time commitment. So with the Foundations class, you are back in a second MBCT class. You don't register for it. It's part of the Foundations tuition. So you're back in a second class, and just the trainees, and usually it's a small cohort, just the trainees are in another class later in that week for 3 hours, 3.5 hours. And we use our lived experience in that class to start unpacking the curriculum. So there's a text for the curriculum. We go through it. We go through and we're also exploring. You're in the class a second time as a participant observer. So you're still there participating. And it's interesting. We often have people that take MBCT and they're like, yeah, I want to pursue training in this. And then they immediately take the foundations, even though and then we'll be in class. And then when we're in the seminar and we're unpacking it, they'll be like, Patty, you didn't do that in the last class. And I'm like, yeah, I did. So people miss a lot. So it's an opportunity to go deeper in the curriculum. So in Foundations, we really study the curriculum based on your lived experience. We look at a little bit of the research. And then also during this class, because you're being trained as a mindfulness facilitator, you'll guide in small groups and receive feedback, the foundational mindfulness practices that we do in MBCT. So you'll guide a brief body scan, you'll guide a mindful movement, you'll guide the 3-minute breathing space, and you'll do a 20-minute interactive, what is mindfulness along the lines of MBCT, and you'll guide a 10-minute focused attention practice. And we introduce and use an instrument called the MBI-TAC, the Mindfulness-Based Intervention Teaching Assessment Criteria. It comes out of the University of Oxford and Bangor, and Brown now participates. It's really a document that identifies the 6 domains of competencies for teaching mindfulness-based groups. So we introduce it and you do some self-assessments. So at the end of the foundations course, you receive the status of, you can't yet teach the full MBCT course, but you're a mindfulness facilitator, and you can say you're a trained mindfulness facilitator through Brown. And so, because we will talk about what might a shorter program look like. You might be like, I don't know about the 8-week program. I've got clients that I don't think that could do that quite yet. What would a 4-week program look like? Or looking at, like, I really want to work with people on an individual basis, but I really want to work through this scaffolding and through this arc of the MBCT curriculum. What does this look like if I were to do it individually? Because it was initially developed as a group modality. So you can start to put together introductory programs, shorter programs, and guide practices, because in the foundations course, we touch on sort of the underpinnings of the MBPs. We do a deeper dive in a different course, but we look at the contemplative practice underpinnings, we look at group process, we look at experiential education, but we really also look at trauma sensitivity. And so MBCT is not trauma informed, but it is trauma sensitive in terms of how we can support people to adapt practices to what's most suitable for them. In the beginning of the MBCT class, we introduce both zones of learning, but also the window of tolerance, so that people can practice safely and that you can guide safely, because mindfulness is so pervasive. So there's really good mindfulness teachers and mindfulness training out there, and there's really bad mindfulness teaching and training. And we also know more about adverse experiences. So we really want people to be doing this safely. So some people may stop here. They may be like, oh, I really don't have a group practice. I don't want to do groups. This mindfulness facilitator is exactly all I need. And other people are like, yes, and I still want to teach the 8-week course. So I would ignore this middle bar, because it depends on the timing and whether you do introductory programs. The next training course is the Teacher Advancement Intensive. This is a 5-day training course that Zindel Siegel joins me with as a co-teacher for half time. So it's usually a Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, all day Monday, and half day on Tuesday. And really in this, it's an opportunity to learn from Zindel. There's a little bit of in vivo practice, but really the majority of the time is spent in the small group, facilitating and leading the different elements and the different practices of the MBCT program. Because after this training, you're a qualified MBCT teacher, able to teach independently and generate revenue. So this is level 1. So this is where I encourage people to focus on, because it gets you teaching if you want to deliver the program. Then if you want to complete the certificate program, it's longer. Let me go back to that. And there's no time frame for the full certificate program. Can you all still see this fuller? Sometimes when I do that, I lose it. So I just took you up through qualified teacher. And what I recommend at qualified teacher is you don't need to market yourself as an MBCT qualified teacher. People would be like, what does that mean? You're an MBCT teacher trained through Brown. To complete the certificate program, what typically takes the longest is you need to teach the 8-week program personally. You need to know where you're going to teach a minimum of 4 times. One of those is done with supervision, ideally your first one. And you need to take 2 courses, Dialogue and Inquiry, which looks at the way we investigate and inquire into practice in mindfulness-based programs, and Ethos. And then there's also silent retreats that you need to take to deepen your practice. If you have silent retreats in your past, we accept those. There's no time frame, so you can take your time on this. Most people really want to get to a level where they're teaching the program. So I'm going to stop here and see if there's any questions. That was a lot of talking on my part. What questions do you have?
Is this done online or everything's?
Yeah, everything's online. Yeah.
Okay. And are these specific days?
So the TAI, the next TAI that we're offering, we work with Zindel's schedule, is scheduled for April 17th through the 21st. So it's a Friday through a Monday. So if you were really interested and you know that you're interested, it would be tight, but you could go all the way through right now. The first thing you would need to do is take the class. You could do that in the fall. Then the next thing that you could do in the winter is take the foundations training program. And then if after the foundations training program, you're like, yes, I still want to teach it. There's like 2 weeks before the foundation, before the TAI starts. So you've got time to then complete it. But you can do it every step of the way. And you can choose to stop based on what you think your needs are going to be, based on what your interest is, based on the type of work that you do, the type of people that you serve, and the settings where you work. Yeah, John.
Okay. So, so there's like different levels here. So like becoming like the end all be all certified teacher to actually then teach this program, I think I'm not trying to teach a program. I'm trying to put together my own little master's program here, and incorporate MBCT in the work that I'm going to be embarking on with individuals. Or, you know, I mean, I think depression is going to be the underlying issue of a lot of things with addiction.
Yeah. Yes.
And trauma and all of that.
Yeah.
And I'll just say it. I mean, so, and we're going to be working with Ibogaine and 5-MeO. And so I'm I think starting out with the 8-week course is probably a good idea to get an idea of where this all goes. But you're still able to more or less incorporate what you've gathered here and learned here. I think through like after the first actual course, not the just 8-week program, but like the 101 or the 102.
Yeah, the foundations class.
Yeah.
So John, this is how I think it works. You take the class personally, and ideally you're benefiting from it, but you're also realizing, oh, if I'm going to teach mindfulness, or if I'm going to teach mindfulness to support individuals with challenging mood states like depression, anxiety, recovery, you want to know the territory that you're guiding people in, right? It's important, right? So you go through the course, and then if you're like, oh, I want to know more about this, I don't actually want to teach the full thing, but I do want to know more about, I really want to study the curriculum. Then you could take the foundations course and stop there. It doesn't complete the training to teach the actual course, but it does give you a deeper understanding that you could create something of your own that might fit the setting that you're in and the people that you're in. Base it on MBCT, because you will have studied that a little bit more in depth than just your personal experience.
Gotcha. Okay, that's really helpful. And you kind of touched on it. So, I mean, this is in the UK looked at as like a clinical, and it's not in the US, correct?
It is. Well, so in the UK, it's in their health system, and in Canada, literally it's listed as treatment is normal for mild to moderate depression. So the National Health Services trains as many clinicians as possible for MBCT. We're not there yet. I think in our country, what you would do and what people do is they're either charging fee for service, or they're delivering the course in 2 hours, and they're using the traditional group therapy code if you're licensed and able to bill.
That's what I was. Okay, so I haven't even gone down that road.
If you're not licensed, then you wouldn't bill insurance. Then you would be charging. You would do a fee. You would charge a fee.
Sure. When you say license, like license in.
Like licensed mental health counselor, licensed social worker, licensed psychologist. It depends on what you're professionally trained and where you're bringing it in.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
You know, and so typically for the MBCT program, we typically require a master's degree, with the exception of addiction counselors, because normally their terminal degrees is less than that, but they're trained and certified as addiction counselors if they're in the program. MBSR, for those of you that are familiar with MBSR, does not have that requirement because it's broader and it was designed differently. And often people come MBSR for a lot of health-related conditions, but it just wasn't designed with the intention that MBCT was.
So I already need an addiction counselor certificate in order to pre-qualify for the.
No, but you need to have some training as a healthcare practitioner for MBCT.
Okay. Gotcha.
That's not necessarily the case with MBSR
Okay.
because it's more open. Yeah.
Gotcha.
What other questions do people have? How many people are thinking of taking the class? I'm just curious. Yeah, a couple of you are. Yeah, great. Yeah, maybe I'll see you in class, or maybe you'll be in class with Bill. Depends on if you're taking it with Brown, you don't have to take it with Brown.
I wanted to ask, I'm getting interested in mindfulness personally, and I've also been getting into yoga at the same time. So I was just wondering if any students have like incorporated yoga into their work after completing the course. Like, how have you heard of any students who've sort of made a course combining this mindfulness training with being a yoga instructor or something like that?
I think they have. There's been yoga teachers in the course, both MBCT and MBSR. You know, if you're familiar with MBSR, there's a routine that's used in MBSR, like a mindful movement routine. We do mindful movement in MBCT. There's stretching. There's a little bit more flexibility with the routine. I will often bring in like the MBSR routines because MBCT doesn't have a designated routine. But what we know with depression is people are often disconnected from their bodies. And so often people will like, and in the class, people often get very sort of like anxious and a little uncomfortable in the beginning of the class because they're like, why are we spending so much time with the body? Why are we doing that? And it's like, because you're spending so much time trying to get out of your body. And so this is where the trauma sensitivity comes in, really, because sometimes the body does not feel like a safe place for people to be in for very obvious reasons and very good reasons. So I think there really is benefit, and we know there's benefit in depression with movement and activity. And often the way MBCT is structured, we do the body scan the first 2 weeks, and then we move to mindful movement. And people are like, oh, it feels so good to move. And then they've started to scaffold and build some attention regulation where they're able to recognize the arising of thoughts and the different sensations. And so now they can bring that into movement as well. Or they recognize, and this is also true for people with anxiety often, is they recognize that what they might need to do is like, oh, now is not the time to sit and do a mindfulness practice. I need to freaking move my body. I need to discharge some of this energy. And so very early on in MBCT, we give people all kinds of permission to get up and move and really start to tune in and listen to the body and really don't exceed your tolerance, but, you know, play with the edges about what would be most supportive. So I think the two are very, very compatible.
Yeah. That's sort of my interest in continuing the training. I completed the MBCT course with Colleen this past spring.
Yeah.
And I sort of got into yoga around the same time. And I was just like, whoa, these two are very related. And I could see myself moving in this direction.
Yeah.
As a
Yeah. Yeah. I think people that are also trained then in like yoga therapy and different yoga therapies combine the two because it's very somatic. Yeah. It can be very beneficial. And there's more and more research. Like, so there's current research. They were presenting it at the conference about the role of the body. So when we're engaged in our senses and moving, it gets the insula, the part of the brain sort of, when we're in our mind, the insula sort of quiets down. So we're not as aware of our body. And that actually keeps us more in the default mode network of the mind more. But when we can start to bring our attention to our senses, particularly our felt sense, it helps ground us in the body. And when we're working with rumination, like the first way out of your thinking mind is into your feeling body, right? So that you try to shift in that way. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Greg.
Yeah, sorry, I have limited connectivity where I'm at, but I was curious. I'm looking at getting relicensed as a social worker, and is there credits towards licensure that would be considered clinical, do you know,
Yeah,
for the
so
foundations class?
yeah, this is a point of contention with us that we don't yet give CEUs because it should qualify for it. And we're working with Brown. What we are able to do, Greg, is what I do present is a description, in essence of a course syllabus that has the learning objectives, the course description, the contact hours, and people have submitted that independently with success.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but at Brown, we are not yet, we're not there yet in terms of granting CEUs. Someone else. Does it seem clear? It's a quiet group. Yeah. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, I'm happy to wrap up. I hope to see some of you in class, whether it's the MBCT class or the training program, either in the fall or in the winter or the spring. Let me put my direct email in the chat. And if you have any questions that you want to ask personally or questions about your particular situation, please reach out to me and we can just hop on Zoom or hop on the phone. Yeah, it's Patricia_Holland@brown.edu. Thanks all for your interest.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hope to see you soon. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.